Folks, it is a solemn day. It is the day that will live in infamy. It is actually Pearl Harbor Day. So we went ahead and did an old World War at War game that we've had for a long time, never looked at. And what game is this, Miss Katie?
Pearl Harbor, 1941.
We've been to Pearl Harbor once.
Yes.
We were on the Missouri, and of course we went over to Arizona where Miss Katie bawled like a newborn.
Like a 5-year-old. Yep.
She bawled heavily at that. It's quite a place to see. We spent a lot of time driving around the island. We were there twice for the Chief of Staff of the Army to go visit the 442nd Infantry, i.e. to go for broke folks. So we were there, spent time, and have more than a passing familiarity with from skulking around, looking at the terrain and everything. So I hope everybody's Christmas season is going well so far. Things are good here. I hope things are good for you all. Hope everybody is healthy and all. And at this point, she's supposed to, because she forgot several videos ago. So what do we do, miss?
Bye-bye.
Bye-byes. Hi, folks. We earlier had Miss Katie talk about an old World at War game, Pearl Harbor, 1941. We have not played it. How do you know we haven't played it? Because the counters are unpunched. So, as I noticed in my preface, today is a day that will live in infamy. It may be the only thing FDR ever said that I agree with. So I actually have something. I'm going to talk about, everybody knows the Gordon Prang book. The Gordon Prang book is the book on Pearl Harbor. But Ian Toll in Pacific Crucible has something, and of course he talks about Mahan's worst case scenario. This is Mahan's worst case scenario. Hector Bywater would have been kind of doing I told you so about this. But what Toll wrote here is that before that morning, Americans had been led to believe that Japanese naval air power was a joke. An assortment of second-rate airplanes piloted by third-rate pilots. But these planes were handled brilliantly. The dive bombers planted their bombs with pinpoint accuracy. The torpedo planes came in low and made textbook drops. The Zeros roared in on behind the bombers and made deadly strafing runs. If not for the carnage on the ground and in the harbor, the entire spectacle could have been an air show. So, like I said, day of infamy, perhaps the only truth that ever escaped FDR's pie hole. And of course, on this day, American intel showed that it continues to repeat its inglorious history of completely screwing the pooch by not knowing where the Japanese carriers were, falling for the call signs, no thought of red teaming Japanese intentions, or even a Hector Bywater thinking about, well, they could do this. So, there is also, I think, the grisly line by some historians that, why the Japanese did us a favor by sinking our dreadnoughts, because it forced us to go to naval air power. I have a feeling those same historians would be boiled in oil after a jury of their peers from the Arizona, particularly the men who were vaporized from the fireball in the magazine explosion, and from those who were tapping on the bottom of the hull of the Oklahoma when it turned turtle. I think they would have something different to say, you know? The game article. Game article is a nicely balanced one. In fact, what I liked about it in particular was that Bomba talked about surf, and he also talked about that, because this is a counterfactual old history game, he actually talked that the Japanese had thrown about this idea, and folks go poo-paw that and go, yeah. But the same sort of things the Japanese had done a number of times, to include at Guadalcanal, where General Kawachaguchi's brigade was brought in, a regiment, and then of course fell ingloriously at Edison Ridge, but the same sort of shoestring operations that they did time and time again. So the idea of a shoestring operation here, possible, very possible. So the game map are of 2 counts here, folks. 2 counts. One, it's bland. The map's bland. It's a magazine game. Okay. The other one is that, well, it doesn't have the terrain right. Well, when I read these comments, and of course, like I said, Miss Katie and I have gone around this place. So said, well, this seemed fairly close enough to me considering all things. And I guess what got me here is that, okay, you missed some of these little tactical villages around the area. Well, they were going to be nothing but speed bumps. So that didn't bother me at all. But, you know, it seems close enough to me in terrain, and looking today at the topographical relief maps, I didn't see the issue. So, but there are 2 things that bother me. Why is this sideways? Why isn't this up and down this way like everything else? And worse, the hex numbers, so I don't write on the map, aren't at the top here where you can read them. Oh no, they're upside down. So, you know, if I was our new kitten Squirt, who, if you hear anything loud crashing, it'll be Squirt outside, he would be on his head spinning around looking at this. I can't see him. Who thought that was a good idea? Come on, guys. You know, somebody needs to think about those things. Counters. And I'm going to kind of get them in close to the thing, and Miss Katie will tell me when they're good. Okay, you can see, of course, we had Japanese Army, we had the SNLF units. Folks, some folks don't like it because it has infantrymen on a single counter. Now, me, I hated those when I saw them on the Drive on Moscow game. Hated them. And then kind of went, you know, they're not so bad. And then actually kind of liked them because they were different. But with the same folks who dislike that, dislike a silhouette of a tank. I don't know. They dislike an infantryman on, say, Combat Command by GMT, or on ASL. I don't know. That's just one of those things. Doesn't bug me. In the game, U.S. Army units are 1 step, Marine Corps are 2, and all Japanese units are 2 steps. There is a horde, and I'm quoting from Board Game Geek, of American units. There's 78 all total to 18 Japanese. Most of the units, American units, are 1-step units. There are 4 Marine units, they're 2-step. All the rest are American infantry that are 1-step. So, and they're as good as the Japanese, but they're not really great. They're not quite cannon fodder, but they're not real good. I know the hordes thing comes back, but again, we're talking about 1 Japanese regiment. 1 Japanese regiment is all that would have landed here for this thing. And the assumption of the game is that the Japanese are going to be here for 3 days, rampage, and try to capture as much as they can. Victory turn conditions: forts, cities, airfields, sinking carriers if they're around to be found, sinking the battleships here at Ford Island, and let's see, cities. Yeah, so terrain. Oh yeah, and the oil farms. Taking the Navy Yard and the oil farms. Oh, all victory point things. Killing units, doesn't matter. Killing air units, doesn't matter. Victory points are terrain here that is considered often to be damaging civilian or military infrastructure. Game is 3 days of combat. There are a number of day turns, and then there are night turns. On night turns, American units might be able to move. Japanese units can move and attack. They can also do banzai attacks, both in day and night. When they do them at night, though, they roll for a modifier, and it may be good for them, and it may be bad for them. Don't know. So, U.S. movement on the counters is variable. For the first several turns, it's a -1 to your die roll. Your die roll is determined by, your movement factors are determined by a die roll. Then it goes into the next phase where it becomes a 0 modifier and then a +1 as we get our act together more as the Americans. That means you better have a good wrist. Good strong wrist here, folks. Need that for this. There's no Japanese turn per se. What they do is they can stop the American phase, not the actual phase, but at the end of an American sub-phase, not to be confused with silent service subs, but they're just calling it a sub-phase. There's 4 sub-phases for the U.S. They can go ahead and say, we're taking our turn now. So the Japanese takes their turn, and maybe they'll want to then take their next turn, either movement combat or combat movement, or they may wait to see what the Americans do again. Okay. Japanese can stack 4 high, Americans can stack 3 high, the Marines can't stack with the Army. Imagine that. I wouldn't want to stack with the Marine Corps. Sorry, Devil Dog, but I know you'll watch this video and you'll go, come on, Smitty. We like Marines, but still wouldn't want to stack them. Japanese battleships can lend support on attacks. Factor of 6. That'll help the Japanese. Japanese Army and the SNOF naval landing forces, like we talked about, cannot work together. The 24th and 25th U.S. Infantry Divisions, though, they can work together. Okay, well, they were kind of a semi-organized rebel at that point. Not much more, really. One of the interesting features, the Japanese can roll up a line because they can attack. If it's successful, then attack again. So if you massed enough Japanese, say in a series of attacks, you could break an American line very easily. And of course, there are banzai attacks. Pearl is pretty simple. Attacking the battleships, but the question is, do the Japanese risk all their air to get rid of the battleships right off? If you don't, you have a 1 in 6 chance. If you don't engage all of them, a 1 in 6 chance that they could survive at a 1-to-1. So if you use all 3, that's 18 factors. And even if the Americans roll roll a 12 because they roll 2 for defensive, so you could get up to 12. But if they roll anything less than, they have to roll 10, 11, and 12. They have a chance to survive there. So, gives it a little counterfactual again. It gives the American fleet a chance to survive. Let's see. What else is there here we should talk about? Pretty simple. It looks pretty simple. Looks easy enough. We'll get around to it. Nobody has written a review of this that's up on Board Game Geek yet. So, a little surprising to me. But of course, today is Pearl Harbor Day, and we're thankful for those in the American Navy and the American Army and American Army Air Corps who gave their lives for us on that day. So, as always, folks, we thank you. It's been a wonderful year so far, and we hope yours continues to be so. So, Miss Katie is not catching my signals to get her hands up there to get ready to turn off. So, all right, folks, thanks.